The moon hangs low over the Sulphur River bottoms. A silver light cuts through the fog that crawls across the bayou floor. The cypress trees rise from the murky black water like the bones of the earth itself, and something out there, deep in the tangle of vines and swamp brush, something moves. Crickets fall silent. A bullfrog stops mid-call. And all at once, the only sound left is the slow ripple of something heavy stepping into the creek. Locals can describe the smell. Sour, rank, rotten. The smell and air mixed is oily and clings to everything. The smell of the swamp mixed with rotten vegetation, wet fur, and a skunk left to stew in a forgotten soup, curling your nose and crawling into your chest, gagging you. And then comes the sound that isn't of any friendly pet or wild local animal. This sound sends chills through your blood. A low, guttural growl echoing through the swamp, followed by an unknown scream that seems to rise from the mud itself. Locals know it all too well, and they call it the Fouke Monster, or the Monster of Boggy Creek. Local folklore hints of a creature related to Bigfoot or some swamp creature. Others suggest deeper roots, something tied to native roots. Stories of forest spirits and vengeful shapeshifters. Stories spread in the 70s like wildfire, whispered among the farmers, hunters, and children. They were warned to stay indoors after dark. Descriptions of the monster stay consistent. A hulking figure at least 7 feet tall, a good comparison against its surroundings. Matted black or red hair, glowing red eyes. But it's the stench that comes first. A thick, wet, rotten lingering in the fog like a warning. It towers upright like a man, most say. Some say it shapeshifts into something not quite human, some creature that belonged to the wilderness. Long before the newspapers and the movies made it famous, people around there swore they saw something. But the sightings started way before the 70s, way before the Ford's encounter made it famous. It was whispered about in hunting camps and shared around at the kitchen table, the kind of stories that locals told after dark. First sighting recorded in local sources was in 1908. The sightings recorded for the Fouke Monster are the ones within a 50-mile range of Fouke, Arkansas. There are over 70 documented sightings in this area alone from 1908 to 2010. And the book that I read was made in about 2012, so there may be more, I don't know. But this was till 2010. And that's only the documented sightings in that 50-mile range, where they're beyond Fouke, Arkansas itself. Much more in different sightings in different areas of the states. There's many, many. Let's get into that sighting from 1971 that put this creature on the maps and made it famous. The Ford sighting of Boggy Creek. It was just after midnight, deep into the swamp south of Texarkana, when something began circling a small farmhouse on U.S. Highway 71. Inside, the Ford family had only lived there for 5 days. That night, Bobby Ford, 25, would end up in the hospital. He was treated for scratches, shock, and pure terror. I was moving so fast I didn't even stop to open the door. I just ran through it, said Bobby. And according to Bobby, the thing that attacked him was not human. It wasn't even something that he could fully describe, but it was big, around 7 feet tall, 3 feet across its chest, and completely covered in thick, dark hair. It walked upright but moved fast, faster than anything that he had ever seen. Bobby's wife, Patricia, She said it wasn't the first time that they had heard it. "We've only been here for 5 days, and it's already come around the house 3 times," she said. Earlier that same week, the women had heard heavy footsteps crossing the porch. On Friday night, it came closer, scratching at the walls, breathing outside the window. And then came Saturday. Elizabeth Ford said she was asleep in the front room when she saw something move. "I saw the curtain moving on the front window and a hairy hand sticking through the glass. At first I thought it was a bear's paw, but it wasn't. It had heavy hair all over it and claws. I could see its eyes red like coals of fire. It didn't make any noise, but you could hear it breathing." The men grabbed their guns out back. They caught it in the beam of a flashlight and opened fire. Bobby said they shot several times, and then he called Constable Ernest Walraven. Ernest, who then brought a shotgun and a stronger light. When they stepped back onto the porch, they saw it again. A massive shadow moving closer through the trees. They fired. It fell, or at least they thought it did, and the men started toward where it dropped. That's when they heard the women scream. According to Don Ford, Bobby had gone back toward the house when something grabbed him. "I was walking the rungs of a ladder to get on the porch when I felt a hairy arm come over my shoulder," Bobby said. "Next thing I knew, I was on the ground. It was breathing real hard. Its eyes were the size of $50 and real red." Bobby tore himself free then and sprinted around the side of the house, crashing through the front door in sheer panic, explaining he didn't know where the monster went. By the time the officers arrived, the creature was long gone, melted back into the dark woods that bordered the house. The only sign that it had been there were scratches on the porch, twisted metal near the base of the house, and the deep, heavy tracks leading toward the swamp. That night would go down as one of the most terrifying encounters in Fouke, Arkansas, the night the Beast of Boggy Creek came to the Ford family. By the time Constable Ernest Walraven arrived back at the Ford property, the house had fallen eerily silent. It was 12:35 a.m. The men were pale and shaken, their clothes torn. The door was splintered from where Bobby had crashed straight through it. Walraven swept through the area with his flashlight, but whatever had been there was gone. The woods behind the house swallowed sound and light. He searched the perimeter, the porch, the yard, but there wasn't a single clear trace of the creature. It was as if the thing had just simply vanished into the swamp. By dawn, the air was thick with the smell of mud and gunpowder. The Ford family was still shaken, and the men decided to comb the property again in daylight. That's when they found the damage. The siding near their window, where Elizabeth had seen the hand, ripped away. Bent metal around the house, twisted like it had been pried open, scratches gouged deep into the wood of the front porch. And then came the discovery that made everyone fall silent. The tracks. In the soft soil near the edge of the property, they found massive 3-toed footprints, not the flat pad of a bear, not the shoe print of a man. Each one sank deep into the earth, spaced wide apart, leading off towards the thick trees behind the Ford home and into the dark, misty stretch of Boggy Creek. It was there, among the cattails and water oaks, that locals said the creature always returned. Somewhere in that endless swamp with its murky waters, mosquito haze, and the constant sound of frogs and whippoorwills, the Fouke monster disappeared again. But the story didn't end there. In the days that followed, sightings spread. Farmers, hunters, school children began telling their own stories. Something tall, hairy, and upright was roaming the creeks and the back roads of southern Arkansas. And for the people of Fouke, the Ford family's nightmare had only confirmed what many had already believed. There was something out there. By sunrise, word had already spread. A monster, a hairy, upright creature, had attacked a family just outside of Fouke. And unlike the usual small town talk, this story had police reports, hospital records, and even eyewitnesses. Bobby Ford's injuries were real: scratches, bruises, and a mild case of shock. When reporters arrived at St. Michael Hospital in Texarkana, Bobby looked shaken. He told them, "I didn't stop to open the doors, I just ran through it." And within hours, the story hit newspapers across the region, under headlines like "Fouke Family Terrorized by a Hairy Monster." The article described a 7-foot-tall creature with long, dark hair, red eyes, and a powerful, foul odor. It moved fast, upright like a man, but its face and claws were wrong. And for many Arkansans, that description sounded eerily familiar. People began to come forward, claiming they had seen something similar in the swamps along the Boggy Creek. Lots of sightings stretching back years. Hunters spoke of strange cries echoing through the trees. The farmers, they swore their livestock had vanished overnight. And now, for the first time, someone had been attacked. Fouke, a quiet patch of pine forest and farmland, suddenly became the center of national attention. Reporters poured in. Curious tourists showed up with binoculars, cameras, and rifles. Locals who had grown up hearing whispers of the Beast of Boggy Creek now watched as that old swamp tale stepped straight out of folklore and into the news. But not everyone believed. Skeptics argued that it might be a misidentified bear or even a prank gone wrong. Still, those who had heard the heavy breathing outside their windows, those who had seen those red eyes in the dark, they didn't need convincing. And in 1972, just 1 year later, filmmaker Charles B. Pierce arrived in town. He interviewed the witnesses and he retraced the Ford family steps, and he even shot on location in the same woods and houses that it all happened. The result? The Legend of Boggy Creek, a low-budget docurama that blended fact and folklore until the two became inseparable. The film spread like wildfire across drive-in theaters, turning the Fouke Monster into a southern cryptid legend, a kind of Bigfoot that belonged uniquely to Arkansas. Today, over half a century later, you can still find plaster casts of the creature's tracks on display in the Fouke Monster Mart. Over the years, the people of Fouke have offered plenty of explanation for what's stalking the swamps. Some sound logical, and some sound insane. But down there in Arkansas, none are dismissed outright, because something was out there. Theory 1. The circus train. The first story that locals whispered goes back to the early 1900s. They say a traveling circus train was cutting through southern Arkansas when it derailed somewhere outside of Fouke. The wreck supposedly scattered animals all through the swamps: lions, monkeys, even chimpanzees. They escaped into the woods. According to this theory, one or more of those primates survived and adapted, and over generations evolved into something else. Something that walked upright and learned to stay hidden and thrived in the dark isolation of Boggy Creek. Skeptics laugh at the idea, but old-timers claim there really was a train wreck in those years, and for a long time after, people saw strange animals coming near the creek at night. Theory 2. The moonshiners. Then there's the darker, more human theory. During the Prohibition era, the backwoods around Fouke were crawling with moonshiners. These swamps provided perfect cover for stills, remote, hard to find, and even harder to get out if you don't belong there. Some believe the monster sightings were actually the work of local bootleggers, men who dressed in animal hides or rags, to scare outsiders away from their operation. They say if you wandered too close to their hidden distilleries at night, you might hear something big moving through the brush, growling, hurling rocks. And if the creature didn't chase you off, the men behind the mask sure would. Theory 3. The Ape Man. Others insist the creature wasn't human at all. To them, the Fouke Monster is a true cryptid, some undiscovered species of North American ape. Sightings describe it as 7 feet tall with long, matted hair, chest like a bear, and a stench like rotten meat, with hunters claiming to have heard deep, chesty grunts echoing from the creek bottoms. Dogs refuse to track it. If you believe this theory, it's not a legend, it's a relic, a living holdover from another age that somehow survived in the wilds of southern Arkansas. Theory 4. The Sundown Town Secret. There's another theory that people don't talk much about, one that ties the monster to a darker chapter in Southern history. Some say the Fouke Monster legend began as a cover story. That back then, the region had sundown towns, places where black travelers weren't safe after dark. According to this version, people who vanished near Boggy Creek didn't fall victim to any monster. They fell victim to the people enforcing those unspoken rules. And over time, the story of a terrifying beast was used to explain away the disappearances and from keep people going out and hiding the truth in plain sight. It's a theory that makes the legend even darker because it suggests the scariest thing in those woods wasn't the creature at all. And Theory 5, the Panther. Finally, there's a theory rooted in something real, the Arkansas Black Panther. For generations, locals have claimed to see huge, shadow-colored cats slinking through the pine forest, animals that officially don't exist here anymore. Some witnesses insist what they saw wasn't upright or ape-like at all, that it was feline. Quick, silent, muscular. And in the thick humidity and moonlight of Boggy Creek, maybe what one person thought was a monster was really just a glimpse of something wild and rare that's always been there. In the end, each theory says more about us than it does about the creature, because when something unexplainable moves through the trees, every person sees what they're most afraid of. Some see a beast, some see a man, and some see both. When it comes to the Fouke Monster, nothing has stirred more debate than the tracks. Footprints, deep, heavy, deliberate, pressed into the Arkansas mud, photographed, cast, and argued over for more than half a century. But the strangest thing about them is the toes. Most Sasquatch-type tracks show 5 toes, just like humans or other primates. And that's what every other researcher expects to see. But the tracks around Fouke, many only showed 3. They say if those prints really belong to one of those legendary creatures, then something didn't add up. A 3-toed configuration would suggest either a completely separate species or something altogether outside the realm of known primates. Still, not everyone agreed that the evidence meant that. Some experts pointed out that reports of fewer than 5 toes aren't unheard of in the Bigfoot research. In fact, roughly 1 in 5 footprint reports mention 4 or even 3 toes. Often, they say, the outer digits just simply don't register in the soft earth, or the ground collapses after the fact, erasing the finer details. So when the prints show 3 or 4 toes, people notice, but 5 gets taken for granted. Like, that's just too perfect. You know, the ones around them kind of disappear in the softer muds or the details. So, yeah, usually 3, 4, 5, it'll be taken for granted, taken for fake. So maybe they all reason the creature wasn't some reptilian monster with claws. Maybe those missing toes were just simply hidden by the muck and the weight of the swamp. And if that were true, then the Fouke Monster might just fit neatly into the pattern of Sasquatch sightings that across the country. But if it wasn't true, then whatever left those marks was something else entirely. The foremost set of tracks linked to the Fouke Monster were discovered on June 13th, 1971, in Willie Smith's bean field. The prints measured 13.5 inches long by 4.5 inches wide, each step spanning nearly 57 inches apart. That's almost 5 feet. Investigators noted a faint impression several inches behind the big toe, a possible trace of another digit, but it was weak and inconsistent, never forming a clear little mark. In every other way, though, the tracks appeared solid, deep, and undeniably bipedal. Some who examined the prints in person doubted they were real. Local reporter Jim Powell pointed out how the prints seemed to conveniently step over the rows of the soybean plants. To him, they looked staged. Even a professional archaeologist, Dr. Frank Schambach from Southern State College in Magnolia, weighed in publicly, saying there was a 99% chance that the tracks were a hoax. He argued that all primates have 5 toes, and that rules out any type of monkey or ape, but others were not convinced. Rick Roberts, who had saw the tracks as a teenager, remembered the stride length, the depth, the sheer number of prints crossing the field, and he told researchers it would have been really hard to fake those. But to prove that the Fouke Monster or something like it walks those woods, you would need more than just the tracks. You would need a body, DNA. You would need incontrovertible proof. And for now, you've got none of that. But what you do have is a series of impressions in soft Arkansas soil. 3 toe marks, huge strides, multiple witnesses and statements, and both scientific scorn and believer hope. You have a mystery. You have more than a legend. In the end, nobody will ever be able to prove the Fouke Monster is real. And maybe that's the point, because what matters most isn't the answer. It's the search. It's the thrill that crawls up your spine when you hear a branch snap in the dark. It's the chill that settles in you when you realize how big those woods really are and how little that we know about what's in them. It's the possibility that somewhere out there, just beyond the tree line, something is still watching. The Fouke Monster may never be caught, photographed, or proven, but as long as someone, somewhere, still tells the story, as long as the name Fouke Monster is whispered around campfires and printed in newspapers or etched in roadside signs, the legend lives on. And this was all said by author Lyle Blackburn, not by me, by Lyle Blackburn, and I will put his book in the description. I'll put his channel in the description. I really, really loved the book and everything I've learned from him. Go watch his channel. Go read his book for so much thorough information. So the Fouke Monster may not be what you're hoping to find, but it's the chase that rewards us, he says. Because deep down, humans have a fascination for things that we don't understand, he says. And maybe that's why the woods of Boggy Creek will always have a safe place to hide. I hope you guys really enjoyed this, brought to you by Lyle Blackburn. So, yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, go read the book. I'll put the book in the description. I got it from Amazon. And go look at his channel. Go learn more beyond what I've just told you. It's awesome. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, let me know what you think. What do you think? What do you think's out there? I definitely think it's some kind of Bigfoot out there. I do. So let us know. Thank you. See you next time on Tales Told in the Dark.